past few months, I have been thoroughly enjoying my Arendal 1961 towers in my home theater for movies and TV shows. But how do they perform for 2-channel? And do you need to pair them with a sub? Let's discuss. By the way, this video isn't sponsored by anybody. Arendal didn't ask me to make another video. In fact, this video was actually recommended by a subscriber of mine that actually asked me to specifically make this video. I'm just doing it a little different with focus and emphasis on the 1961 towers. For this review, I'll be running the 1961 towers in a sealed configuration by plugging both ports in the back. I'll be pairing the 1961s with my PB4000 subwoofer, also in a sealed configuration by plugging all 3 ports. I'll be listening to a variety of tracks with and without the PB4000 to see how the 1961s perform in each scenario. I'll be using Anthem Arc Genesis to switch between 2 profiles. The 1961s without the sub will be full range in a sealed configuration, and the 1961s with the sub will be crossed over at 80 Hz, also sealed. Before we dive into the meat and potatoes of this review, let's take a look at how the 1961s and the PB4000 measured in a sealed configuration. In its sealed configuration, the 1961 towers can dip down to 49 Hz, whereas the PB4000 in its sealed configuration can still dip down to 18 Hz, which is pretty impressive for a sealed subwoofer. If we take a look at the left and right speakers on profile 1 with the PB4000, nothing new here. My room has some issues, but the 1961 start to roll off right around 80 Hz, and the PB4000 accurately in its sealed configuration starts to roll off around 18 to 20 Hz. And then if we look at profile 2, the 1961s in its pure 2-channel configuration with no sub, the left and right both accurately roll off at 49 Hz, which is their rated frequency response when sealed. So both the PB4000 and the 1961s measure accurately to their factory stated frequency response. Good job, SVS and Arendal. Tracks like Misha Manstro's Breaking the Covenant, the 1961s allow you to hear every single instrument with exceptional detail, whether it's a hi-hat, cymbal, guitar riff, or bass note. The 1961s are just a pleasure to sit back and enjoy some good 2-channel tracks. And it was the same listening experience when listening to artists like Stained, Alice in Chains, Breaking Benjamin. No matter what artist I listened to, I always got the same detailed high fidelity experience. A great way to test the low frequency of your speakers, or just your speakers in general, is with the HSU or Shoe Research test disc. Now, if you've ever bought a Shoe Research subwoofer in the past, then you would have received this disc with your sub. The disc is mainly to test your subwoofer, but it works for speakers just as well. It's got some symphony tracks with some deep bass, as well as some test tones from 250 Hz all the way down to 16 Hz. I'll leave a link in the description where you can download the same files that I used for this review. Okay, you probably couldn't tell the difference through a compressed YouTube video between those 2 clips, but I actually felt the 1961 sounded better by themselves versus crossed over at 80 Hz with a sub. And that's probably in part because there are a lot more high frequencies in that symphony track. But I didn't notice too much of a difference here. If anything, I'd say there was just a tad bit more low end with the PB4000. To close out this review, I had to listen to my favorite composer, Hans Zimmer. Now, despite how you feel about the movie, Batman vs. Superman's motion picture soundtrack has some amazing acoustics as well as some low bass whenever Ben Affleck's Batman's theme song is played. And just for reference, I'm using the DTS Play-Fi app on my phone and I'm streaming CD rips from my Plex media server back to my Anthem MRX, again via DTS Play-Fi in critical listening mode, which lets you stream high-res audio for the highest quality possible. Alright, so this demo should have been more apparent. The 1961 sounded way better by themselves without the sub. So good, in fact, I actually had to triple check to make sure my PB4000 was not active. The bass sounded that good. Now, if you notice that the 1961 sounded louder without the sub during the Batman vs. Superman track, it's because they were. And I noticed this too, so I decided to look at the SPL levels in my MRX receiver settings, and it raised the 1961s to plus 9 decibels with no sub. With the sub crossed over at 80 Hz, it set the levels to -1 on the 1961s. I feel like that's too much of a discrepancy, so I adjusted the levels to plus 9 on profile 1 with the sub and left everything else the same, still crossed over at 80 Hz. And I gotta say, after going back and listening to both profiles, I still prefer the 1961s without a sub for 2-channel. They're just that good. And for the type of music I was listening to, I never felt that they were lacking in bass in any way. The Arendal 1961 towers are a sneak up on you and hit you in your face kind of speaker. When you first unbox them, upon first glance, you might question the capabilities of these speakers. But once you start listening, it won't take long before you realize just how in your face the 1961 towers can be. Detail and clarity is never lost, no matter the SPL levels. And because they're forum speakers, you can feed the 1961s with a ton of power, which is best because the 1961s really reach their full potential the louder you turn them up. So, my final verdict. Do the 1961 towers need a subwoofer for 2-channel? Absolutely not. The asterisk being, that's going to depend entirely on your preference and what genre of music you're listening to. If you're somebody like me who enjoys music that doesn't require a ton of low frequency, primarily rock and alternative music, and a little country from time to time, then the 1961 towers will absolutely outperform anything in its price range. And you'll be able to turn them up pretty much as loud as you want without ever having to worry about distortion, clipping, or ear fatigue like so many other speaker brands. However, if you just love your bass and you're somebody that enjoys R&B or hip hop or classical music, or you're going to be listening to tracks that go below the rated 49 Hz sealed and 39 Hz ported, the 1961s will still sound really good, but I think it's obvious that you're going to need to pair them with a sub to get that lowest extension possible, especially if you're going to be using these for dual purpose and also watching movies. So you really can't go wrong either way with the 1961 towers for 2-channel with or without the sub. I'm really starting to enjoy 2-channel with the 1961s. I mean, my jaw literally dropped when I heard how incredible they sounded without a subwoofer at high listening levels. The bass was punchy and tight, and legit made me second guess if my PB4000 was actually engaged or not. So that's my 2-channel review of the 1961 towers from Arendal. At the time of this review, the 1961s can be had for $17.99 a pair in your choice of matte black or matte white. And if you've been following the channel, then you know I'm on a mission to replace all my speakers in my theater with Arendal. So I will be purchasing these speakers to keep in my theater. And I'm really looking forward to my next speaker purchase, the 1723S monitors. This will complete my bed layer speakers. Well, almost. I'll still have 2 poke in walls for side surrounds that I'll have to decide whether to keep in the future if I want a complete Arendal system. But since they're already in the walls, there's not really much I can do right now. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss more videos like this one. And speaking of like, why don't you hit the thumbs up on this video if you liked it and share it with your friends. As always, no matter where you're at on your home theater journey, make sure you enjoy it. For Haterade Cowboy Cinema, I'm Haterade Cowboy, and I'll see you guys in the next video.